So, friends, what is God calling us to do now? Really? What's God calling us to do next? We've been freed from sin and death in our baptism, and that is indeed a wonderful thing, that we are freed from sin and we are freed from death. It's awesome. It's great. But rarely are we simply freed from something. I mean, Peter's mother-in-law, she was not just freed from her illness. She was not made well and left to relax. She was not touched by Christ and yet abandoned still to the bedroom. No! She was made whole and well and restored to life, to something. In her case, it was a life of hospitality and service. Now, according to Sarah Heinrich, illness in those days bore a heavy social cost. Not only would a person be unable to earn a living or contribute to the well-being of a household, but their ability to take their proper role in the community, to be honored as a valuable member of a household or a village or a town, would be taken away from them as well. Peter's mother-in-law is an excellent case in point. It was her calling and her honor to show hospitality to guests as they arrived in her home. Cut off from that role by an illness, cut off from doing that which integrated her into the world, Jesus restored her to her social world and brought her back to a life of value by freeing her from that fever. It's very important to see in the Bible healing about restoration to community as a restoration of a calling, as a role as well as restoration to life. For life without community and calling is bleak. End quote. Imagine if that was your life, cut off. Imagine if that was our life together, with no purpose, without being able to do the things we enjoy doing. Imagine being forbidden from doing the things you love to do. Now, many of us have experienced that in some very short blasts in our lifetime, and some of us know that of which Mark speaks, and some of us don't deal with it very well. I mean, last year at this time I was recuperating from hip replacement surgery. I couldn't be here and preach, and I couldn't cook. The two things I love to do more than anything else in the world. And quite frankly, those 5 weeks, I thought I would lose my mind. I mean, yeah, it was great to have time to read. It was great to have time to research. It was great to prepare for Lent ahead of time. But for a number of weeks, I sat in my recliner, twiddling my thumbs, or doing laps up and down the hall from the kitchen to the bathroom. And it drove me nuts. Thank goodness for Facebook. Thank you, Vicki. And thank goodness for those of you who stopped by to visit or made calls or sent cards, because it's very isolating when you're prohibited from doing the things you love to do. And yes, it was wonderful to receive meals by the incredible cooks in this congregation. But I couldn't bend to get anything out of the stupid oven. And I couldn't run my food processor or my mixer, and I'm pretty sure I heard them crying. It drove me nuts. Thrilled was I when the doctor said, "You can bend more than 90 degrees now." Giddy with delight was I the first Sunday I could come back here and lead worship among you. It's my calling, it's my purpose. I needed to be healed, yes, from pain, but more importantly, I needed to be freed to serve and to use the gifts that God had given me. I was free to be back down on the floor with the children, or standing at the pulpit, or getting in and out of the car to make visits, or rolling out pie crust and able to push it into the oven. I was not only freed from something, but also to a fuller and richer life, and it was a gift. And I think the same thing happened for Peter's mother-in-law. You know, I used to be Sarah. I used to read this text and get all bent out of shape because, of course, the woman in the text has to get up out of her sick bed and make sandwiches for the men that are in the room, and it's sexist and it's terrible and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, of late, as I turn to Mark and this particular story, I'm reminded of an incident years ago with my maternal grandmother. My uncle was getting married, and this was in the 60s. And in the 60s, you had church weddings with church social hall receptions, and the rehearsal dinner happened at the home of the groom's parents the night before the wedding. My grandmother got a migraine that night, and she had to go off to bed. So my young aunts were responsible for laying out the food on the kitchen table and putting the plates out and making sure everything, you know, the coffee and the punch was ready. And the next morning, as we all gathered at my grandmother's house, because my little sister was the flower girl, my grandmother was sobbing and sobbing and sobbing because my aunts missed a casserole in the back of the refrigerator. And my grandmother had not been there to oversee and to prepare and to serve this meal for her son's wedding. And it was heartbreaking for her to not be free to do something she had always wanted to do, something she deeply desired. In our baptism, we are freed from sin and death. They don't hold any power over us anymore. We don't need to fear the wrath of God because we get something wrong. We don't need to fear a lack of forgiveness or a threat of eternal punishment because we aren't exactly right about everything, whatever everything is to us. We are free to use our gifts to serve one another, to serve God, to serve all of God's people wherever they may be found. And you might be 12, or you might be 36, or you might be 95. You might be a scout sitting here in a green uniform, or an adult, or a confirmand. But you are free to do whatever it is that brings you joy. Maybe it is making sandwiches and providing hospitality. There are some of you, and yes, I'm looking at you, Sue Orlando, that I can't imagine telling you the kitchen's off limits. It just isn't going to happen. And there are some of you that I can't imagine keeping you away from volunteering at Two Doors, or emptying the trash cans, or making coffee on Sunday morning, or repairing bikes downtown for kids who don't have bikes, or doing income taxes for people you don't even know, or creating PowerPoints, or singing in the choir, or playing the drums, or whatever it is you love to do. You know, last week I was at the ELCA Youth and Family Ministry Network Conference. It was a pretty awesome conference. There were over 1,000 Lutherans gathered there because they have a shared passion to work with our children and our families. They were passionate about providing worship spaces that are welcoming. They are passionate about teaching all children regardless of their abilities. It was a conference that was held to support and nurture those who deeply desire to share their gifts in this way with the whole church. And as we gathered each day, twice a day for worship, we always ended with the same song refrain. And it's a song that's been running through my head as a prayer all week long. Because I think that although this particular text wasn't part of the conference, the song reminds us that we are empowered in our baptism and in the hearing of the word, and in the encountering of the Savior, to boldly proclaim our freedom to serve. And so this song has spoken to me all week long, and the words, I'm not going to ruin it for you by trying to sing it. You can Google it if you want to hear it. The words are thus: give us ears that we might hear, give us eyes that we might see, give us hope that we might hope, give us faith that we might be the ones who break and share your bread, declare you risen from the dead, that all your people might be fed, and on the way we might believe. We're free. We're forgiven. We're fed. We're healed. Now, what is God calling us to do? Amen.